Good afternoon. It is a blessing to be here with you at the Forest Hill Church of Christ. I don't know where you come from. Most of you, I don't know your backgrounds, but I'm going to tell you something that's very important right now. I and my wife carry one similar sentiment, in that we feel that we owe this church, the Memphis School of Preaching, our souls, really, for the impact that the work here has had on our lives. Untold changes were made in our lives to serve God. And my children have grown up in a Christian home because of what we learned here. We've been able to help others in our family learn the gospel because of what we learned here. And to be able to stand here before you today, to us, is an honor. And I hope you know what an honor it is to be at a place like this. I am so thankful that the elders have allowed us to come and be with you. Thankful for Scott and Melissa and Evan and Mallory. Thankful for all the work that goes on here. Thankful for each and every member here. This hour, I'm going to describe to you the mission work that we're going to be engaging in, and I want to say it this way: together. Together. When you read the book of Hebrews, you're going to see a phrase there that says, "Let us." It's used 11 times in the book of Hebrews. Let us. For instance, let us not forsake the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is. Let us. Christianity was never meant to be a singular thing. It was meant to be a united thing, a together thing. And Christ made it where His disciples would be together. And this mission work that we're embarking on together is something that I believe can be of benefit to each and every person here. This year, your theme has been growing together. Next year is going together. Several of you have come to me this morning excited about some possibilities of engaging in mission work, and I'm glad to hear that. I hope that we can work together. And this hour, what I want to do is I want to explain to you what we do, why we do it, and how we do it. I hope to get you excited about mission work. One of the most interesting things about our New Testament is that Christians in your New Testament never stayed put. Somebody once mentioned to me, they said, "You Coldwaters are always on the move." And I believe that's a Christian pattern. When you turn to your Bibles in Acts chapter 8, you find those that were persecuted. There was this heavy persecution that takes place in the church in Jerusalem. And you know the verse, Acts chapter 8 and verse 4, "Then they that were scattered abroad went everywhere, preaching the word." And the rest of the book of Acts, what you see is one account after another account of people going just as they were told, right? Jesus, as He gives the Great Commission, as you would read it in Mark chapter 16, "Go ye into all the world." Brethren, that's our job, is to go. We need to grow together to the point that we can go together. And I believe God has opened that door for us. At the Manna Project, we do things just a little bit different. And there's some reasons why. The first reason why is we need to take a serious account for the state of the Lord's church in the United States. As you look around, on average right now, the church is dying in numbers as far as congregations go in the United States. 300 congregations plus a year right now are closing their doors. I don't know if you understand the brevity of such a statement. 300 congregations a year. What happens to mission works that have been supported by those congregations that have now shut their doors? Well, they suffer. So how then do we help mission works prosper across the world when American congregations can no longer help them? Maybe they can't even be reached, as in the case in places like Cameroon right now, where it's torn by a civil war. You can't even go there to help them. You can't even send money there. How do you help them? I believe we have to rethink our mission paradigm, our mission mindset, the way we do what we do. And so the how and the why matter when it comes to missions. One of the things I believe what we really need to focus on when it comes to missions is helping to create preachers that are self-sustaining and congregations that are self-sustaining. For far too long, we have been enabling churches not to stand on their own. Out of a genuinely good heart, we've been helping them. And we need to. Congregations overseas are worthy of our support. I don't want you to leave here and say, Gage doesn't think we should support mission works overseas. That's the furthest thing from what I believe. But there's a lot of places in the world that need to learn to be on their own. That was Paul's design as he went out by inspiration and he worked with these churches. What was he constantly trying to get them to do? Be on their own. When he would write to Titus, what did he want him to do? To put in place those things that were what? Wanting. We need to get rid of the paternal missions mindset. What do I mean by paternal? The paternal missions mindset is where America is the parent and the rest of the world is the child, and that's how we treat it. And we need to get rid of that mindset. Brethren, they are on equal plane with us. We need to catch hold of this. They are on equal plane with us. America is not the giant eldership for the rest of the world. What we are is another congregation here at Forest Hill, trying to help other congregations around the world, help other preachers around the world. But we are in no way their parent. And that's kind of how it's been treated for years. And we need to get rid of that mindset. When you think about the why of missions work, and we're going to talk about the methodology we use in a minute. I want us to think really for a minute about the why, though. Oh, and we know a lot of these things, right? We know John chapter 3 and verse 16. We know that we want to go into all the world. Why? Because God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. We know that. And we understand that the world needs the gospel. Because without the gospel, as Paul would say in Ephesians chapter 2, while you were dead in sins and trespasses. And that's what the world is dealing with, sin. And that's what we're trying to help them overcome. We know the problem. We know God's love and how He wanted to save them. But how do we do that? And why do we do it the way we do it? Well, when you look at Paul's approach to his mission work, I think he leaves us a great model that we can model in our own work. For instance, you go with me to Acts chapter 18. Paul is traveling and he comes to a city called Corinth. And as he gets there in chapter 18 and verse 2 of the book of Acts, it says, he found a certain Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus, lately come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because that Claudius had commanded all Jews to depart from Rome, and they came to them. And because he was of the same craft, he abode with them and wrought or worked. For by their occupation they were tent makers. And so here's Paul. He's traveling and he's preaching. He gets at Corinth. He meets some Christians named Aquila and Priscilla. He begins to live with them. They take him in and he works with them because they were of the same profession. Now go just a couple chapters to chapter 20. Paul talking to the eldership in Ephesus. He's about to depart. He's warned them that there are going to come into that flock grievous wolves that are going to try to devour the flock. We know those passages. We know verse 32 where Paul would say, and now I commend you to God and to the word of His grace, which is able to build you up and give you an inheritance amongst all them which are sanctified. But that's really where we end in chapter 20. But I want you to notice what he's going to say now in verse 33. He says, I have coveted no man's silver or gold or apparel. Yea, you yourselves know that these hands have ministered to my necessities and to those that were with me. And I have showed you all things, how that so laboring you ought to support the weak. And to remember the words of the Lord, who and how He said, it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. What is Paul saying? He's telling the elders there, he says, listen, and if you go back quite a bit, back into the text there, Paul would say that he has declared the whole counsel of God to them. He is free from the blood of all men. What's Paul saying? I've done everything I can to equip you. I even supported myself. I labored with my hands. How? Building tents. And he didn't just take care of himself. Who else did he take care of? The others that were working with him, men like Timothy, Silas, Titus. He was a man that was willing to help them and help those that were weak. The word weak here is not the word for somebody spiritually weak, but somebody that's feeble. Somebody that is deserving of benevolence. So what's Paul's pattern? He was able to, when he could, support himself, helped those around him, and then took care of the weak. That's the Pauline method of missionary work. And so he says, my hands, they worked. Our needs were met. And emphasis here on needs. I want to show you a little bit about where we're working, and then I'm going to explain to you how we're doing it. So we have several preaching schools. We have 3 preaching schools that we have built. Of those, we have one in Cameroon, and then we have one in Uganda, and we have one in Tanzania. I don't know is my mic working? When I turn it, it sounds like it's going deaf. All right. So we have 3 there. The school in Cameroon. Well, we'll go to it in a second. We'll start with Uganda. I thought I had Cameroon first. So the school in Uganda, it has everything that it needs to survive. And one of our goals was when we built preaching schools, we didn't want elaborate schools. We wanted schools that could eventually become self-sustaining. We don't believe in building big fancy buildings like we have here in America because we're not in America. We want to make it village-like. We want it to meet what they already have there. And so this school, by the time we bought the property and built the school, cost us $30,000, lock, stock, and barrel, everything. Okay. Right now, we can host around 20 students, but we have a school farm that provides the food. We recently acquired a canal that is now being dug to connect to our school that will provide water fresh year-round from a stream way up in the mountains. And so we've got this canal that's going to be coming down and then piped into the school building, so we'll have fresh, free water year-round. And we have solar panels that line the entire roof that provide all of our electricity. Now, I have on here our main crop is vanilla, and within the last year, we had a drought. It's almost been 2 years now, but a drought that has absolutely wiped our vanilla out. And so there are always obstacles in Africa, and that's one of them is drought. Right now, it costs us about $650 a month to operate. That's going to go up quite a bit as we go forward. I'm going to tell you some more about what we're doing with this school. We grow a lot of food there, though. This is corn that was grown on the school farm that's been all bagged up. We grow cotton. We have about 45 goats right now on the school farm that provide meat. The next school is Cameroon. And Cameroon, the school is in the northwest region. It's in the Bamenda region is what it's called. And it's right on the border of Nigeria. And it's a very dangerous area. And we worked really hard in 2017 to get this school going. And one of our goals was to quickly get it on its own. None of these schools do we want to oversee forever. We want them to be in the hands of the local brethren. This school is our first one to do that. In the last year, we were able to turn this over to a congregation in Cameroon, in Bamenda, and they oversee this school now. It doesn't cost us anything. We're there as a resource. We provide them literature. We provide them academic help, but they're on their own completely. They have all their own food. They have all their own water from the Kumba River, which is at the base of our school. They have all their own electricity through solar panels. And so they grow a lot of bananas to help supplement their income for the school to provide for the students. The last school that we've built is the Talawanda School of Preaching, and this is in eastern Tanzania. There are 2 great preaching schools already in Tanzania. There's the Andrew Connolly School of Preaching in the north in Arusha. There's the Chamala School of Preaching in the south in Chamala. But there was nobody working, and Tanzania is an enormous country, nobody was working on the eastern coast of Tanzania, and there was a reason. It's what they call it, the Muslim zone. And so along the eastern coast, you go down Ethiopia, Kenya, down the eastern side of Tanzania into Malawi, and that eastern side is heavily dominated by, and quite a bit of, radical Islam. People didn't want to work there. Matter of fact, I've had sweet, well-intentioned, good-meaning people come to me and say, why are you going there? Don't you know, they've watched way too much Fox News, by the way, that you're going to have your head cut off. And as you can tell, mine is still attached. And we have been able to convert over 600 Muslims since we started this school. Matter of fact, the majority of our students that come to the school are Muslims. And I'm going to describe it this way, just to help you understand a little bit about what we're dealing with there. Most of the Muslims we actually deal with aren't extremists. Most of them is what I have labeled like a Baptist Muslim. And The best way I know to illustrate this is one day we were riding in a van going to Talawanda to where the school was, and Maurice Gasper, our school director there, and myself and another gentleman were in the car. And Adrian Rogers, of all the people in the world to be playing on the radio, in this Muslim's car, he's got on all the Muslim garb, he's got the Muslim inscriptions up on his dash, everything's there, and he's listening to Adrian Rogers preach, the famous Baptist preacher. And I said, "Are you a Muslim or are you Baptist?" He said, "Oh, I love this guy." And I said, "Why are you a Muslim?" "Because my parents are." Anybody relate? So, we studied and studied and studied with this guy. We were actually able to convert him. This is how the majority of those people are. So I got a burn in my seat. I said, "Man, we need to be working on the Muslims. Why are we so scared of them? They need the gospel too." And so I began searching for resources for our mission workers in the Talawanda area, in the eastern coast of Africa, and there were none. There were no resources for dealing with Islam. Anybody ever seen a Bible correspondence course for taking someone from Islam to the Lord's church? Because there's not any until about 4 years ago. So Lee Wright and I came home, we wrote a Bible correspondence course. That's what we've used extensively. We've printed over 10,000 of them and passed them out. 600 converts from it. Brethren, if we'll go, there are people that are willing to learn the gospel. What we have to do is be willing to go. I could not be more thankful. There were 2 excellent lessons, both in this room this morning. Brother Woods taught a fantastic class talking about the supporting staff of Paul and how those men, through suffering, were going, willing to risk their own life and limb to go and work. And brethren, we've got to be willing to go. The gospel needs to go everywhere. And Tanzania and the eastern coast, this is one of those places. Now, this is one of those schools I'm just really excited about. Our director there is amazing. He doesn't want to be the director. He's a humble gentleman. His name's Maurice Gasper, one of the best people I've ever met. But he does not want to be the director. And so he took a young man that was not even a Christian yet and began teaching him the Bible. And he messaged me one day, he said, "Gage, I want this young man to become the new director." I said, "He's not even a Christian." He said, "He will be." He converted him. That young man is learning English so that we can communicate with him. But I've gotten the opportunity to meet with him on several occasions, and I am excited. Maurice wants to back out of the picture because it's not about Maurice. When you can work with people like that, it's exciting. And this school is growing by leaps and bounds. This is some of the produce they've grown. They love their watermelon, cucumbers. They grow a lot of okra. Anybody know what that plant is? That's cassava. And it's a root that grows in the ground, and they make a flour out of it. We grow a lot of cassava. The next work we have is the Joppa School of Preaching. This is where we're working in Nepal, and you got to hear plenty from Evan about this work, so I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but what we're trying to do is build a resource center there where we're helping. There are 70 guys that every week, 5 nights a week, get on to Zoom and they study the Bible together. We don't want to stop that. We've got some self-starting people that are doing great things. What we want to do is encourage that and help them. And so what we've built is we're doing a resource center there to give them some help. We've got over 100 congregations that are enrolled. And what we're trying to do is help these congregations learn to be self-supporting, have their own preachers from within the congregation. They don't have to hire somebody from out. They don't have to have a big budget to do it. They can utilize those men that are within their congregation. I want you to think of this. It's a completely different paradigm, I know. But if you've got a congregation of 30 people and you've got 4 men in it that can get up and read their Bible and teach a very simple lesson from Scripture, do you have the availability to have a preacher? Everybody ought to nod yes. They do. And if we kind of get rid of the Western mindset when it comes to missions, we can help them a lot. They want to be just like us. They want to have their located man that has a salary and that's all he does. But that's just not a reality over there. What if we can teach 4 men within their congregation and they've got a whole month to prepare their lessons? If you had a whole month to prepare one lesson, could you do it? Absolutely. So what we're doing is helping. There's 100 congregations signed up for this. I'm going to show you the curriculum here in a minute. I'm really excited. We're doing videos where We are pushing media heavily at the Manna Project now. Listen, the world operates off of a cell phone, even in third world countries. It's amazing. They'll live in a mud hut. They'll walk everywhere or ride a bicycle everywhere, but you know what they'll have? An iPhone 10. They have YouTube, they have Facebook. Guess what we need to be doing? Helping them utilize those resources. And so, for instance, here we have Promote, and he is making a video on salvation, how to become a New Testament Christian, that they are putting up on their YouTube and their Facebook there. Here's a congregation way up in the mountains. This is a village called Dotting Bessie. This is us preaching, and we get a lot of invites to preach in denominational churches, to come and preach to them. And this is us preaching in a denominational church there, another one. These are 4 blind people. So we're helping work in the the western part of Nepal. We're helping this congregation that's just been established there, and they're doing great work. Most of them are blind. Most of the blindness even that's caused there that happens there is caused by malnutrition. And so we're doing some work with that as well. Here's another one of the baptisms. But I wanted to talk to you about our School of Evangelism. This is the newest thing that we are doing, and it, I think, has the opportunity to change our work in a big way. So our school in Uganda, we have changed completely our curriculum. Up until now, we have modeled our school curriculum essentially after an American preaching school, much like we have here at the Memphis School of Preaching. This year, we had 60 men sign up to go to the Renzori School of Preaching. We have room for 20. So what do? Do we build more dorms? Hire more teachers? Well, we don't have more teachers really that are qualified. What do? So I have this idea. What if we could turn out an army of preachers and missionaries and do it quickly? And I want you to think boot camp style. What we have developed is a curriculum that takes 6 months. And we're going to take the evangelized that are way out in these villages that want to come to preaching school. And they have some obstacles. They have the obstacle first that they have to leave their families at home. Then they have to leave their job. And they have to find a way to support their family that's at home. Those are some big obstacles, wouldn't you say? So what we've done is we've broken this into a 6-month school, 2 3-month sessions, where they can go home in the middle for a few weeks, then come back, do another 3 months, and they're done. And we're not going to focus on every book of the Bible in our training. We're going to focus on, and here's the curriculum, these 12 classes. So first, when they come there, is the basics of the New Testament church. We're going to take them from beginning of the Bible to the end of the Bible in a very quick summary of the Bible and how the Lord's church came to be, how it operates, how it worships, what salvation is. Then we're going to spend some time working on the work of the church. What is the actual work of the church? And Scott hit on that earlier. We're going to take them to studying about elders and deacons and preachers' work. We're going to focus them, and we're partnered with House to House School of Evangelism, Rob Whitaker. And we have all of his literature, and we're getting it all translated into every language in every country that we work, and we have free access to all of his material. And we are teaching them how to do the Back to the Bible series. And so that they can go back to their villages and do the same thing. We're going to teach them how to deal with all the false doctrines that they deal with where they're at. We're going to teach them how to help when there is division in the church. And what do you do? What do you do when there's sin in the congregation? How do you deal with that? We're going to talk to them about building godly families within their congregations. And then something that's a real struggle overseas is sacrificial giving. How can they actually build up enough funds within their congregation to support their own work? We're going to teach them about that. And then the last class, and what I believe might be the most critical at this point, is how do they go back and develop this same program where they live? What if they could build a preaching school essentially in their village and train men? You might say, well, where did you come up with this idea? So, Tom, here he is, the black gentleman there in the middle of that picture, is our school director. He's our new school director. He and I were talking several months ago. And the reason we hired him was because he was extremely evangelistic, well-versed in Scripture, but he has been training men already to preach. And what they had in Uganda was every few months they have what they call holiday, and it's about 3 weeks long. And he was taking members of the church, men that had been converted, that wanted to learn to preach, and for those 3 weeks that they had holiday, he was extensively training them in evangelism, the basics of the church, the New Testament church worship, salvation, and sending them back. And in doing so, he was helping these men plant congregations all around their villages and was extremely successful. So I said, why don't we do that at our preaching school? Why don't we model what you're doing in a big way? Is this not exactly what Paul was doing? Was Paul not taking men like Timothy and Titus and Silas and others and doing the same exact thing? And so they've been going out. I said, let's do that there. And he said, I don't know. We're going to lose credibility with the other preaching schools. And I said, who cares? Who cares? He didn't like it at first. A couple weeks go by and I get this message from Tom. And he says, hey, you remember that idea you proposed we do? I said, yeah. He said, I'm all in. So we're going to try it. And we're going to do this. So we're going to be able to train 20 minutes at a time, 2 classes a year. After the 3rd class goes through, we're going to offer another 6-month class, and it's going to be an advanced class. So these men that have done really well, they want to come back and learn some more, they'll be able to come back for another 6 months. Something we're really, really excited about. We really want to emphasize that. Now, you're looking at this and going, where's the rabbits and the chickens and the goats and the pigs? That's what we're known for, isn't it? Manna Project, one of our goals is to help them be self-sustaining. And so the way we often do that is through agriculture. And when you look at what we can do to help preachers continue preaching, one of the best ways we can do that is through training in agriculture. And throughout the years, we've kind of been known as an agricultural mission work. And that's really a misnomer because that's really just a tool that's in our cabinet for us to use. But our goal is really evangelism. Yeah, we can train them how to raise goats and sheep. We can raise cattle and pigs, and we can raise ducks. We can teach them to raise crops, and that's what we do. So while they're at school, every one of them every day is working on the school farm, and that's giving them an opportunity in a very hands-on way to learn how to grow whatever they want to. Matter of fact, when they leave school, we actually provide them with breeding pairs of animals, seeds to get started, and tools to get started with. Our school in Uganda, we provide them with muck boots so that when they go back, they have farm shoes to work in. The very simple things that you would never think of, they need. And so we utilize that as a tool. And I want you to remember what we discussed from Acts chapter 20. Paul said, these hands have ministered to my necessities, but not to mine only, but to also them that were with me. And I have showed you. You know how I have showed you how through so laboring you ought to support the weak. One of the really great things about training them in agriculture is they can not only support themselves to keep preaching, and people always ask, why do you teach them agriculture? Why not like electronics or mechanic? And we do actually do some of those classes. But here's the reason we do agriculture. Who likes to eat? You guys lie. Raise your hands. We all like to eat, right? We're not missing meals, and it's clear. I'm not. What happens if you build a table, you're a carpenter, and you can't sell it? Can you eat it? But if you're a farmer, if you grow it, can you eat it? That's why we teach agriculture. We want to keep, and listen, what good does it do to train a man to preach, put him into the field if he can't stay preaching because he can't support his family, he can't feed his kids? So I'm going to tell you real quickly how the Manna Project started. I was in Nepal. I was teaching in a preaching school there. And the preaching school students kept coming to me and saying, would you support me? My family is starving. And there were about 20-some students, and every one of them had asked me, and they all had the same story. And I said, well, I'd love to help each of you, but I can't. And if I help one, guess what? I'm going to make the rest mad. I said, every one of you had the same story. Your family's starving. I said, I grew up on a big farm. We grew pretty much everything we ate. I said, why don't you guys grow your own food? You don't have to starve then. We don't know how. I said, what do you mean you don't know how to grow a tomato? You don't know how to grow potatoes. You put seed in the ground, you fertilize it, you water it. Seems basic enough to me because I'd grown up my whole life doing it. Most of these preaching school students that were at the schools were from bigger cities that had never done that for a couple generations. So I got a bird in my seat. I said, listen, I'll teach you guys how to do this if you want. And so we started it, and it just took off like wildfire. So our goal is to not only teach them to preach, but keep them in the field preaching. Brethren, I'm excited to do this together with you. Brethren, I believe we can go into all the world and we can spread the gospel. We can help preachers and we can help brethren. But even more than that, we can even do benevolence. At our school in Uganda, for instance, we have 3,000 trees there that are called Moringa oleifera. Most of you have never heard of Moringa oleifera. In India, they call it the drumstick tree. It's utilized all over the world for its medicinal purposes. Matter of fact, it's the most nutritious plant on earth. And all the nutrition is pretty much contained in the leaves. You can take the leaves, strip them off the tree, dry them in the shade, crush them into a powder, and you can put it into, for instance, in Africa, they eat porridge most of the time and beans. You can put it in the porridge, and it has more protein in it than beef. It has more calcium than milk. It has every amino acid that you need for your body to function. It's an amazing plant. Go home and just type in on the Google moringa and its benefits, and you'll be amazed. What we do with that, and I'm not telling you that so you'll grow moringa here. You can't because it freezes and it'll die. It's a tropical plant. But why I'm telling you about that is, and the reason we grow it is because of this. What if we could go into a village and help where malnutrition is taking over? So what we do is we grow 3,000 of these trees at the school. We're constantly stripping the leaves off. People think we're crazy. We make powder out of it, and we've got huge bags, huge 100-kilo bags full of this. And we package it up in these little clear Ziploc bags, essentially, with Bible literature about the Lord's church, about salvation, about how God loves them. What does Paul say? And you yourselves know how these hands have labored to my necessities, not to mine only, but also what? Through so laboring, how you ought to do what? Support the weak. So we're training them while they're at school how they have the resources that they could grow on a tree right outside their house. It's the fastest growing tree on earth, by the way. Grows as fast as bamboo. Right there in their backyard. And they can use that as a resource for evangelism. Brethren, that's powerful. Does God tell us He's given us everything we need? I believe reading that somewhere. And He has. He has given us a beautiful earth that has everything on it that we can utilize. And brethren, it's all for one purpose. To spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's our sole focus. I could care less if somebody can grow a tomato. Now, I like a tomato. I want them to be able to grow a tomato, but that's not the purpose of the Manna Project. Our purpose is to go into all the world with the gospel. We want to give them the tools to do that. And so together, I believe we can. I'm excited that we're going to be able to be here with you, worship with you, and base out of here. In Acts chapter 14, Paul would go home to his home congregation, the congregation that had commissioned him to go into the world, and he would give them a report. And it says this in Acts chapter 14, verse 26. He says, and thence they sailed to Antioch, from whence they had been recommended to the grace of God for the work which they had fulfilled. And that word fulfilled is an interesting word in the Greek. It literally means to fill the net. What did Jesus tell His disciples that they were going to do? Be fishers of men. And what did Paul say He'd done? Filled the net. Brethren, let's go into all the world and fill the net with disciples of Jesus Christ and teach them that the evangelized can now become the evangelist. That's our goal. You're sitting here, maybe you have never obeyed that gospel that we're talking about. Maybe you have never become the evangelized. Maybe you're sitting here and you have never surrendered your life to Jesus Christ in a humble obedience. You've never reached out in faith and said, I trust you. I love you for what you've done, and so I'm now going to obey you. That's exactly what every person in your New Testament did that you read about. You read about people like the Ethiopian eunuch as he's going along and he is reading this prophecy in the book of Isaiah about this one that's going to be a lamb that's dumb. He's going to die and he's going to be killed. And the Lord sends someone to him to preach to him. And as they go along, they come to a certain body of water. And it says, look, here is water. What hinders me from being baptized? And maybe that's the question you need to ask yourself today. What hinders you? And I've never met a single person that had anything other than them hindering them. So maybe today, if you'll get out of your way and yield yourself to Jesus, you can become his child through humble obedience. And we'd love to help you with that. I look forward to working with you. And I love the song we sung just a while ago. Let's get to work. And let's work together going into all the world to spread the gospel. If you need to respond to the gospel invitation this hour, we encourage you to do so. I appreciate your kind audience this morning, your attention. I didn't see one single person asleep, so I must have done okay. Let's work together, brethren, as we stand and as we sing.